Hey everybody, welcome. This is Karen Lanoux, and I've got Jesai Chantler from Spirit Forces with us today, and I'm so excited. So, hi Jesai.
Hi Karen.
So, I'm really excited about this because I wanted to do a series in my podcast on and bring in intuitives, because I love working with intuitives and have for years and years and years. And Jesai is one of my favorite people on the face of the planet. And I came across Jesai. We had a common person in common. She told me some stories about the ways he helped her, and so I was hooked. It was just right after my mom had passed away, and so it was. So I just, when we go through those kinds of periods of time, to me it was just important to just see if she's okay and connect in that way. And Jesai was able to help in that way. Now beyond that, I've worked with Jesai. He's been instrumental in so many things in terms of my life, Jeff's life, and my business. And so I wanted to introduce you to him. And so Jesai, again, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here with us today.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Oh, are preachers going to start singing?
They're about to start singing.
Jesai has these two wonderful big white, what are they, huskies?
Husky Malamutes.
Yeah, Husky Malamutes, and they're beautiful. And often when I get on the phone with them, with Jesai, it's okay. Often when I get on the phone with Jesai, they start singing, and so it sounds like that's what they're about to do. So just, sorry, go ahead.
Detectors.
Yes. So Jesai, I know that they're starting to go, but if tell us a little bit about, you're such a great intuitive. How, and I know you call yourself an oracle, or tell me, how does this come apart? How did this come about in your life? How did you know? When did you know that you had this special gift?
I guess I was born with it. My parents used to be very upset with my grandmother, because every time they would ask my grandparents for advice, they would always my grandmother would always say to ask Jesai. And so all my life I've been doing this work, really, and it was just more in the last probably 25 years that I've been doing it full time that I really became aware of what it was. I used to read things about intuitives and psychics and think that would be cool, but the way that a lot of things are described, I think that a lot of times it makes it so that people don't understand their own abilities. And so it took me a few years to understand exactly what those kinds of gifts that we carry are, and what clairvoyance is, what clairaudience is. And for years, my parents tried to convince me that that everything that was kind of going on around me, that basically that I should be locked up. And it was through the years of doing this work that it became confirmed that all those things that were in my head were coming from somewhere else. And it was always quite astounding when I was doing readings. I first started with psychic lines, and I was doing probably 30 to 40 readings an evening for people. And some of the things that would come through, I just thought for the first couple of years people were being very, very polite and kind by agreeing with everything that was coming up in a reading. And then I started understanding that the angels were guiding people to find greater fulfillment in their lives and to navigate their way through challenges and difficulties. And so when I started working on my own, that became more evident, this how the energy of the angels helps people to really resolve, or to see a new paradigm in their lives. And a lot of times we hold on to an identity or a path or a way of doing things that's kind of been built on the world around us, finding acceptance and what we call success in the world. And I found that the angels have tried to help us find that a lot of the goals that we set for ourselves sometimes are really premonitions of what's to come. And so we'll find that a lot of people become very impatient, that they want that goal right now, but it's really a premonition, and a premonition is something that takes time sometimes, and sometimes it comes very quickly, and sometimes it takes time to unfold. And so when I'm working with the angels and the spirit guides around people, it's usually those energies trying to help people to discern that pathway and how to get there with less difficulties and maybe achieve it a little bit quicker, if that's possible.
Right. Yes, I would be one of those impatient people. I know you know that about me. Yeah. So you work with angels and guides, right?
On many different levels. Like the things that the spirits have taught me is that the guides that are around people are the people, usually that people have known that have passed away. And there's what we call councils. There's kind of spiritual councils, a group of spirits that help to bring knowledge to people, and they are varying different colors, determine the kinds of frequencies or energies that they're emanating from. Then there's angelic forces and angels, and some of the angels are more physical. Some of them kind of, again, come from more like of a frequency or a color band. There's also teachers that kind of appear more like human form. But usually they're people that you've never known before, but they'll come through you in your life to bring guidance not only to you, but when we see a teacher, they're reaching through that person into the world, as we've seen around you as well, that they work through you to bring a message to the world outside of that person, and kind of defines the path that's ahead of the person as well. So there's all different kinds of forces and energies and frequencies, and all of our technologies in our world kind of prove these things. We have telephones and TVs and radios, and each one of them has a different frequency. And so the same thing happens in the spirit world and in the angelic realms, and they all come through with different information. With a telephone, you can hear, and with the technology we're using right now, you can kind of hear and see things. And so we trust those things because we've been taught that those are physical things. Whereas when we have frequencies of a higher level coming through, a lot of times it's hard to discern the message because they're coming through with information that might be foreign to us. So it's like the first time you saw a ship on the water or something, you know, it doesn't compute. It's there, and they'll leave you with something. And the same thing with the spirit guides, with people that have crossed over. A lot of times we'll find that they're not quite sure where they are, because in our world we've been taught that when we pass away we go to heaven and that there's going to be a group of angels singing and you'll see all these friends and everything, whereas we're bound by the laws of nature. So this, when the spirit enters into the light body, then it's held in the world. It's just like our TV station. If you turn off your TV, the stations don't get sucked up into the universe, and you have to find a new station.
Right.
It's the same thing with the spirit. It's still held by the world around us. And so when we're having conversations in our heads, like we're having memories or thoughts or conversations with the spirits, that's actually communication happening. But because we don't have a telephone in our hand, we don't trust that. Mm-hmm. We miss that person, or we wish they were there, but they really are there. We're really talking to them. And that's one of the biggest things that the angels and the spirits want the world to know and to understand, because we're trained in our world that if you communicate with them or talk to them, you're holding them back or you're hurting them in some way. And it's really a lie. And the spirits really want to be present and prevalent in our lives. And we need to continue the relationship on and with that light body, with their presence. And that's the magic of it all. And that's the beauty of the spirit world, that they can bring information and knowledge to us and guide us to greater fulfillment if we understand that and believe in that.
Right. Yes, my parents showed up this morning in a dream, and it's, I think, when it's like, oh yeah, you're going to talk to Jesai, yay! It's like they come around and it's like, come on, wake up.
As soon as you started talking, I got your mom wanted to say hello to you. So.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Mom. Where, So yeah, it's just it's interesting, and I think and then we could talk forever about all of that. But what I really wanted to talk about, because it's the beginning of the we're going into the new year, and it just feels like 2016 in a way. I see online and whatnot, and it's so, and it just feels like it's been a hell of a year, right? So and a lot of people, we've seen so many icons pass away, so these great musicians, these great people, actors, beyond, just regular wonderful people also that are in our lives that have also passed. But it also seems that it's been a year where bad behavior, or kind of the behavior of the things that you wouldn't want your children to do, or you wouldn't want to have people in your life do. It's like that kind of energy has been rewarded. And so can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, that's my perception. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's just what it feels like yeah. So
there's amazing things going on in our world that are kind of kept from the world. When we look at December 21st of 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world. And so we'll find that there's beings or people in the world that try to keep us from realizing our true fulfillment and our true path in life. And so what really took place on that day in 2012 was we left the constellation of Pisces and entered into the constellation of Aquarius. The constellation of Pisces, it should have been a celebration really in our world, but it was hidden from the world for reasons, that are greater than we might be aware of. And so even as we look at the numbers, like the numerology of last year, it was a 9-year. We're kind of moving out of Pisces, and 9 is about completion, and it's a high spiritual number as well. So it's about being tested. Are you ready for the next phase of your life? And depending on the numerology and numerological values, our destiny numbers, that each one of us has a different number and a different numerological value in our names, in our birth dates, in our times of birth, where we live. All these numbers are present in our lives. And so depending on what the year is, like, so last year was a 9, it's about completion, moving into new territory, and it's like walking through a gateway. So depending on what the numbers in your life represent, compared to that number 9 will determine the things that you go through and the things that take place. So when you say that some people appear to kind of have wonderful things happen, even though they weren't doing great things in the world, it depends on where those numerological values are. And so it might look like they had great things happen, but they weren't really great things. So we're moving into a number 1 year, and so that's kind of a pioneering time. And so it's the same thing with the pioneers. As they arrived in the new territory, in the new country, there would be things that they'd have to become aware of, the terrain and the territory and the elements that they're going to have to battle and endure. And so we're coming out of a completion year where a lot of us were tested, especially people that are light workers. They were tested like in the greatest way, with the greatest challenges. And it just seemed like we were running in mud.
Mm-hmm.
And quicksand, that it's like it didn't matter how fast you tried to do things, that things took their own time to come to completion.
Right.
As we move into the 1 year now, into 2017, again, we're in new territory. And in our world in general right now, there's a lot of things that are happening like all at once. And we had tremendous amount of planets last year that were in retrograde. The large planets all went retrograde at the same time for about 6 months, which, depending on where those planets are in people's individual charts, will determine what happens and the challenges that they might go through. And so it was a very, very difficult time for a lot of people, and we saw a lot of people wanting to check out last year, over this last year. When you put that with coming out of the paradigm of Pisces and going into Aquarius, there's a lot of things that represents again. Aquarius is all about changing that paradigm. Pisces is about people can do things like, Pisces is about thought forms and things going in opposite directions. It's like, so people don't really know what's up or what's down or what's true or what's false. And so they look for religions and governments and dictators, people that will tell them what to do. And so when we in at the constellation of Pisces, these are things that become manifest. As we leave Pisces and go into Aquarius, Aquarius is the opposite, the exact opposite. And it's all about finding your own truth, finding the individual within you, and being an individual in the world amongst other individuals. You want absolute truth, you want absolute science, you want absolute knowledge. And so they're quite opposite.
Mm-hmm.
As we come out of Pisces, we're going to see that those regimes that took hold in the world, they're not going to want to let go of that power.
No.
So there's going to be that fight, that struggle. And so we're going to see a dissemination of fear in the world over this next year, especially because this is a year like that people will start to look for their own empowerment, and they're getting tired of being told all of these terrible things and seeing these terrible things happen in the world. So a lot of people are just getting up, and because it's a pioneering year, it's like pioneers get up and they forge through the mountains. They get on a wagon train and they let's go. And so a lot of people are going to get up this year and go, I'm tired of all of this. I'm tired of listening to all this fear and these terrible things that are going on. And so we're finding a lot of people are just like turning and moving in a new direction. And when we see all these great icons that are kind of disappearing in our world, those are usually the people that held the greatest voice, that they were kind of leaders in that way, moving people in a new direction and talking about things in a certain way that empowered people. And so those people become threats to the world, to the regime of Pisces.
Right.
Even a lot of things that are happening physically in our world can be explained with astrology as well. Like that Pisces is the largest and most ambiguous of all of the constellations. Gravity is very weak. So as we're in Pisces, the Earth, it's a water sign, which is a great dissolver. So the Earth is pulled apart. People are pulled apart. The universe expands. So we'll see the planets seem to kind of disappear from view. Everything gets pulled apart. And so we'll even see if you could imagine that if the Earth is being expanded because gravity is weaker, then the water levels appear to recede. As we come into Aquarius, it's the exact opposite. It's the tightest and the smallest of all the star systems. So gravity is very strong. And so the Earth is going to start compacting and coming back together, and it's going to make it appear that the water levels are rising. But really, the Earth is coming back to its proper place. The axis is going to shift a little bit because it's not, as the gravity is stronger, it's going to become more true to itself, which happens in the psyche of the person and the individual as well. And so we have a lot of these amazing things that are happening, but people are being told it's global warming. It's your fault. You polluted this world and you're destroying the world, but really it wasn't us at all. And yes, there's things that we should pay attention to, but really there's so many greater things that are happening in our universe right now that are really spectacular that we should be looking at and celebrating and understanding. And because they represent the true person inside each one of us as well. And these are things, again, that can become a bit of a threat to governments and to religions, because you don't want self-empowered beings and control them. And that's where it's a very interesting time. When we hear that there is going to be the war of all wars, it's like that's this big battle. Really, it's more of an internal thing that's happening, I think. And that's happening in our world right now. We're really in the midst of a reformation. And this is the beginning. 2017, I think, is like the real beginning of it, where people will stand up and go, okay, let's start moving in a new direction. And so we'll see, like, even with technologies, like Aquarius is all about communications and technology. And it's just a really fascinating thing when we understand these things. Look at how the leaps that have happened in a very short period of time with technology in itself. And we've moved into a real reformation in our world. Like, things are happening in a way and in a rate that we've never experienced before. We can communicate and just like this, and which, even a couple of years ago, it wasn't possible.
Right. Yeah.
And now this is commonplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's really it's really, I think, going to be very exciting for the year ahead. There's going to be things that take place that we can't even start to predict. It's like working with the angelic forces. They're coming through us now because they can, because as we become more true to ourselves and in our feeling and experience of feeling body, then those voices have a stronger input into the world. And so we're going to see these things happen. So it's hard to describe what that exactly will be,
Right.
because it doesn't exist yet. We're
Right.
going to see so many things this year.
So what, I mean, I think, again, even personally, and as I see so many people who are looking ahead and looking at, well, what do I do with all of this, right? How do I, as one person, when I see all this stuff going on in the world that is just really quite awful, and leaders acting out in a way that you wouldn't want them to act necessarily, right? And it feels like, in a way that hasn't felt like this for since I was a kid. It feels like we're in peril, right? And so at the hands of just these just we're just imperiled by these people that are now leaders. So how do how I always tell, or how I kind of suggest to people always is like, do something, do what you feel, just to take some kind of action. That always makes us feel like we're in more control, and we do have a ripple effect in that way. But in terms of awareness, or what should we be doing? Like, what should people in kind of general be doing if they're seeing these things that are just so contrary? Like, again, it's that old energy that is is rising up, and I often say this too: is old energy dies hard, right? And it's gonna like you say, it's this battle. So what do we do, right? So in terms of when we see the stuff that is not right, and is not is not good for all. I just can't see how it can be. What do we do?
Well, if we look at that perspective, something the spirits talk about a lot is, if there's a bully in the schoolyard and you walk up and you tap the bully on the shoulder, what's going to happen?
Yeah, you have to get punched. Yeah.
And so really, and it's something that I learned working with, like, documenting all of the destruction of rainforests and some of the communities that went through problems with all of their watersheds being destroyed. That if you go to that and you talk to those people, that what you're really doing is giving them power, and which allows them to continue doing what they're doing. And so if people gather together and go in an opposite direction, then there's nothing to bully. They have no power.
Right.
And as long as everybody's watching all of these things, then what we want to do is be paying attention to what's really going on. Because quite often we'll see that the way that things take place in our world is that if you can draw attention to something, then you can do something behind everybody's backs without them looking. And so the more intense and the more distracted that we become is allowing something to take place behind us that we should be aware of. It's like telling everybody, look on this side of the boat, so everybody runs to that side of the boat.
Yeah.
And then the people that want to do something behind our backs, is they're doing it on the other side of the boat.
Oh yeah, and I constantly see, I kept constantly seeing this happen, right? And whereas, like, there's all this fuss over here, and it's like, but that there's just something nefarious going on over here, right? So,
That's really a part of Pisces, like the last kick of Pisces. It's about deception and holding power and having a belief system, because and holding that power over people. And if we think about it, the word belief in itself, it means that you're giving credence to somebody else's experience in your life, or somebody else's word, that you don't actually have the actual experience yourself. You're just living by somebody else's word.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding your true powers is by focusing on your own experience. And so to listen to our true voice. You know, and it's something that I learned in studying natural medicine and homeopathy. It's like the emotions are the disease. And so as long as we can see these emotions being created, it's like walking into a room where people are coughing and hacking and spitting. You know, it's like you'll end up with a cold or the flu. The emotions are the same thing in our lives. If we have anger and fear and worry in our lives, those are the diseases of the world. They're like a virus, and they don't come from within you. We've been trained to believe that. And so happiness isn't an emotion, it's a practice. And that's what true religion is about, is what we see as God is happiness. It's not a goal. It's not something that we need to make somebody happy or to achieve all of these things before we be happy. And that's what the governments and what a lot of these things that are happening in our world right now, it's like, well, if we have this government, then we'll be happier. If we do this, if we end this war, then we'll be happier. If we stop world hunger, we'll be happy. It's like, but what we need to do is practice happiness within, and then everything gets resolved, if that makes sense. And that's what the spirits and the angels try to bring through to the individuals. Because when you practice that, you become the teacher of it in the world. And when you're happy inside of yourself, you quiet the world around you, because it makes people feel like everything's going to be okay. And so we'll see that the more disruptive that things are in the world with governments and things outside of ourselves, the more that it disrupts that place within you, that you can't be happy when the outside world is disrupted, if that makes sense.
Sure, but is there, so there's part of me who kind of goes, yeah, but there's it's so yes, being happy and practicing happiness and being in that state of being is important, is crucial. But if you're saying that if there's this activity that's going on here, we actually go in the opposite direction in terms of and creating what we want, right? Creating the creating. I guess the thing is like there's these people, these leaders, these things that are creating these things and have the potential to take things back globally, 50 years, right? It seems like. And so how do we I know that for me personally, it's like, and I think there will be other people who might say, well, just being happy is, there feels like you have to do more than that just to counteract those kinds of movements and those kinds of challenges. And so are there actually actions that we can take?
But the thing is that as long as you do that, you're going up to the bully in
right.
the schoolyard. And, when people aren't well, and again, like if you're upset and you're angry and frustrated and feeling lost, then how can you find your way out of the woods?
Right.
I've spent a lot of time in the backcountry and in the woods, and it's like I've been lost in the woods before. And if you're panicking, goodbye.
Yeah.
It's like what we need to do is and like when we think of being happy, we automatically think skipping through the forest,
yeah.
a basket of roses.
Right. Really, yeah.
Happiness is really when you're in a state of non-reaction. Then your higher self has a place within you that can speak loudly, so you're not doubting. And that's what happens in our world. And even as the things you're speaking about, there's all this self-doubt. It's like, what do we do? What way should we go? Like that's doubt. And then we go into this defense mechanism. What do I do to protect myself? How do I protect myself? And so that we start asking all these questions, and these are where the emotions start building strength within us and taking us off our path.
Sure.
It's scientifically, and we'll see it even on these modern day doctor shows that are out there, if you smile, it sends a signal to your body to be happy, to be healthy.
Right.
And so we'll find that a lot of times with all this stuff, if you're watching the news, you're not going to be smiling. You're
Yeah.
you're going to be lost afterwards, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? It's like,
Yeah.
and how can you find your path after that?
Right.
And so if you smile and think, okay, well, it's good to be aware of what's happening in the world, but that's outside of my world. And yes, it can have an effect on me, but right now I need to listen to this inner voice, and I need to be in a state of happiness. And again, maybe there's a better word for it, but it's the only word that we really have. And it's what I've learned through in Chinese medicine. I have a diploma in Chinese medicine. I have a doctorate in homeopathy. And it's like we use the emotions as the symptoms
Mm-hmm.
to determine how to cure somebody or how to help the body cure itself.
Right.
And so when you remove the reactions, you return people to a state of happiness, because that's what everybody wants. That's what everybody follows religion for.
Yeah.
They worship God because they want to be happy. They don't want to be ill because they want happiness. They work hard every day and make money to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But when do people practice happiness?
Right.
It's like, and when we do that, and we'll find that the light workers tend to do that.
Yeah.
We all go through these challenges and these difficulties, which are distractions. They're also lessons. Like, how do you bring it back to that place?
Sure.
It's like swinging a pendulum. It's going to go both directions until it comes to a place of stillness, and there's no more reaction then.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And so then you're actually in a state where you can hear and you can be aware and you can get that guidance. And so if there is actions to take, you'll get that information to do that at that point.
Exactly. And you're not doubting it anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah, to me, it's like I'm sneaky. I always want to be. It's like, okay, I see these bullies, and it's just like, okay, how can we covertly, take them off track? So it's like I want to be sneaky, but the way to be sneaky in this way is, as you're saying, is really just coming back within and listening to that guidance, and trust that if there's action to take, that you'll be given that information, and that you'll just be compelled to take that at that point.
And that's what the pioneers did. They got into the wagon trains and they started into the mountains.
Yeah.
They had no idea the perils that they were going to encounter.
Right.
They had to endure it. They had to find a way to smile,
Right.
Otherwise they would have turned around and gone back,
Right. Yeah.
And why did they do that? And what were they leaving behind? There's things that these perils or these challenges with governments have been going on for a long time. When I studied in Chinese medicine, a lot of people from China came to Canada to work on the railroads and things because it was a better life. And you look at them and you go, how could that have been a better life?
Right.
It's like the challenges and the difficulties, the oppression that they had. And same thing for the settlers that came here.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they do that? Why did they endure going through the mountains? What was it that they were leaving behind,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that life was going to be better?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And the same thing with what we're encountering this year ahead of us. It's breaking new territory, and what tools are we going to take with us? I don't know if you've ever gone on an expedition and it's like in the first week you realize you've got 50 pounds of clothes and things that you never needed.
Right. Yeah.
And you're finding the first post office and sending them back home.
Right.
And just keeping the essential things.
Right.
What is it that we need in our toolboxes and to take with us this year that will help us to kind of find more security in our lives? Because right now, with what you're talking about, with the way that the governments are, it tends to give us a sense of insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling insecure, then who has power?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
right.
So if you find that inner power within yourself, and we just take a deep breath and we take step by step, the same as a baby. Like a baby can't just get up and go, oh, hi world, and start going, like running and walking. It's like it has to take one step up to it. It has to find that equilibrium, that balance.
Right.
That's what we're doing right now in the world. And it's challenging. And then we've got all these things going on outside of us. If you can imagine being a baby trying to walk and its mother and father throwing bottles and vases across the room. And it's
right.
just,
right.
It's still going to want to walk, but
right.
it's going to be more cautious, And
sure.
It's learning that glass hurts. And,
right. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's happening in our world. We're seeing supposedly kind of the governments are like mom and dad fighting, it's like, and how do we navigate that? How do we take these steps even with all this stuff going on? And that's where human nature kicks in.
Right.
We'll really come to that place. There's lots of people that they harbor fear and worry, and they can't let go of it.
Yeah.
But that's what we have to do. That's what this last year was about. That's why there was so many challenges. Are you ready for the next year, for the pioneering part?
Right.
You know, a lot of people, like if we look at the wagon trains, how many people didn't go? They got on the wagon train and they went like 100 feet and they went, I can't do this.
Yeah. It's bouncy. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think that if we kind of equate these things, and all these things that are happening in our world, it's how do we find our own truth and find our own peace within this, and how do we hold on to that breath and keep
Right.
and how do we do things that make us healthy through this year. And we'll find, even like with the way we eat, with the way we exercise, the things that we do, what are we doing that builds health and helps us to keep that inner voice strong? And if we get caught up in what's going on in the outside world, then we're going to look for like the worst foods to eat. We won't do anything because we'll be pinned to the TV watching all this stuff. Our posture is going to cut off our breathing.
Right.
And so we're not contributing, we're not helping. And I think that that's a part of this year, is to be helping the world. We need to really come into our light bodies and really come into our sense of true self. And that's an exciting thing. Like, how do we do that? How do we achieve that?
Okay.
Here, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. So, and I could ask you question after question after question, but I think I think that's a really good spot to end on, is just that, just coming back into your light bodies and getting into that sense of trust and awareness, and doing those things that feed it, and make it well enough so again that we are able to go through this pioneering year. So overall, would you say, so to me, it kind of sounds like, is this going to be a difficult year ahead of?
It depends, it's like if you're riding in a wagon train and you don't put anything under your butt, it's going to be hard on that wooden seat.
Right. Yeah.
And, it can be uncomfortable because it's outside of our comfort zones. We're going to see things happening in the world, but do we need to be involved or be afraid of it? And how do we find our own sense of comfort, and how do we take care of ourselves, and our own needs this year, I think is really important, because we're going to see those things. And how do we navigate this world now, that there's things happening? So how do we kind of enter it? Like, a lot of people are going to be very afraid about their work and their jobs and their careers because the government is changing, and so automatically that always brings a sense of worry. But do we need to worry? And if there's challenges, then again, this is the new paradigm. There's a reformation in the world right now that's happening. So what could you do? And I have a lot of clients right now who are like, now what do I do? It's like, I want to change everything. And I'm like, well, the spirits are really telling you, you're an expert at what you do. So how do you keep doing that in a new way?
Right.
And build upon that rather than ditching that, and that's where I feel like a lot of the time this year and coming out of last year, a lot of people have that sense that they're scrambling. Like, what am I going to do to make money? And well, how do we keep the world going and do what we're best at in a new way?
Right.
And so we can look at it as it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
And there can be emotional things that arise, but how do we take care of those things quickly? Right. And Smile usually does that right away. And it might have to remember to do that and carry around a mirror.
Yeah. This would be my smile.
I've got a beautiful smile.
Okay, well, that's great. So it's all right. So that's great. So again, it's just making, remembering to smile, remembering that this we are going into an exciting time. And so that awareness and coming back into the present, being centered, reconnecting with yourself and being aware and listening to that guidance will steer you right.
Well, and to be aware as well that there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of things that held power that are going to try to hold power.
Right.
And so we're going to see that people want to have power over you. and
Right.
over things, like, because that makes them feel secure.
Sure.
And so to be aware of that, and how do we navigate around those things, and so that you don't feel squashed,
Right.
because that's been a lot of what's happening around us and in our world right now.
Sure.
And we'll just have to look at your smile to be reminded of how to smile.
Oh, thank you. I can see, I'm going to have you back on at some point again. So, because again, I think this is a great conversation to have. I know people just are searching, right. And asking questions. And, again, it's just,
and that's so great.
Yeah.
People are doing that.
Yeah. Here's the other thing too, is that you see people who are kind of authorities to a certain degree. I mean, who, I've even had people, say to me, it's like, Karen, you're supposed to be this and this and this, and you're not exhibiting that. It's like, I know, but I don't know. We don't have the answer. We don't have all the answers, right?
The thing is that the light workers will go through greater challenges.
Yeah.
And we're showing people how to do that, because you're resolving it. You're going through these challenges and then you find a resolution. Whereas a lot of times I think that people go through challenges and they crash and burn.
Right.
So you're walking through fire for everyone, and you're smiling while you're doing it.
Sometimes.
And same thing, like when none of us got a free ride last year,
right,
or over the last couple of years, it's like, and so as you go through these challenges, you're learning skills that you pass on.
Yeah.
Because we're literally moving into a whole new paradigm with Aquarius.
Right.
So, if we look at going back 3,000 years, because that's the grand ecliptic, it's 2,500 to 3,000 years that we see the constellations will hold power. We'll see that there's, no big people like Jesus and Buddha and, all these Kuan Yin, like all these great beings that came onto the earth plane to warn us about and how to live through that time.
Right.
They left us with practices to be able to weather the storm as we go through that constellation. And same thing, here we have Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Oprah. We had these people that came onto the earth plane and have been preparing us for Aquarius. How do you find your true self? How do you enter into that being?
Yeah.
And now what you're doing is taking people to that next level again, know. And so all the things that you're going through are helping you to give the skills to those people. Because if we look at, some of these other people, like, it was reminding us about that place, but they didn't give us the skills to deal with it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so, and the people that surround you are going to be more into the light work on that cutting edge. And so you're the leader on that level. And so all these experiences you're having are actually going to help people in many, many ways,
right.
as they are, as with this, what you're doing right now, you're reminding people and guiding people. And I've always been very excited for you. It's like that. It's just finding your way through that storm, that maze.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a great light in the world, and it's like you're doing great things and great work, and I'm very proud to know you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jesai. Thank you. I remember the song Age of Aquarius when I was a kid, and I just I thought this already happened. So now? Okay.
We're on the cusp of it, and now we're into it.
Right. Yeah.
It's exciting, and people should be aware of it.
Sure. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I sure appreciate it. And
Namaste.
And I so appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you, Jesai. Oh, and so tell us how to get in touch with you, because you do great work. As I've said, I've done work with Jesai. He's done sessions with me, many sessions with me, and they've completely impacted my life in an amazing way. And so, Jesai, how can people get in touch with you?
I guess my website, spiritforces.com. I have an 800 number. It's 888-763-3394. And my email address is jesai@spiritforces.com. If you don't get through right away, because technology seems to have challenges these days about try again or try
Yeah.
phoning, like until you get through.
Yes. So yes, and that's great. And then let Jesai know that if you've that you've seen him on this podcast, and let him know that how much you enjoyed it. And so thank you again, Jesai. I sure appreciate it, and thank you everybody for being with us here today. And so just gonna wrap up with our sponsor. Thank you.
Happy New Year and happy 2017.
Yes, thank you. Same to you.
Bye.
Bye.